if you're able to see the screen. It should be like a,
Yes.
value stream. And let me also go here full screen in my environment so that we can see it a little bit better. So in ADOIT, or in enterprise architecture in general, we stick to this kind of like high-level view of things, right? So we want to get a better understanding of how our architecture is built up, and for instance, in this example here also, how a value stream could look like of capabilities. So it's about getting a good understanding of the overall structure, and then from there, possibly then drilling down, depending on what scenario we're looking at, to get a better understanding of certain alignments, right? So in this example for today's session, we'll be focusing a bit on the capabilities, starting off from a very high-level approach, and then drilling it a bit more into the applications that are typically in a way supporting these or part of this capability in order to deliver the function, right? So there is structures here, viewpoints that we're going to see. There's going to be drill downs and some type of analysis, either via graphical charts or via, for instance, heat mapping, as I've already had activated here. Maybe let me start without enabling it. So from this high-level view of an airport example, we see typical things that happen when, for instance, a passenger also comes in. There's passenger handling, aircraft service and turnaround, all the way up to departure and takeoff. So this is the whole kind of like idea that everybody here very likely has experienced when going to an airport. These larger boxes here representing our functions or the value stream and a sequence. And in here we have these I don't know what color that is, kind of like brownish colors that represent the capabilities. This is good. So then we can, in ADOIT, for instance, if we have this maybe as a landing page or as a point of getting started, always activate our color, right? And this is done either already in the ahead of time, and you can just activate it and save it in your analysis view, right? Or in your, in this case, model, and it's always going to pop up like this. Or you can obviously do it as I'm doing ad hoc. Here I'm seeing at the capabilities and also, for instance, where I maybe want to focus because a certain fitness is not met, right? So I see, for instance, if I go over here, the ones in green maybe are, to me, if I want to analyze them a bit more, okay, right? And this one here in red, or maybe the ones in orange, could be the ones that I want to focus on a bit more, right? So these are possibilities using the heat mapping. Obviously, I can also select the various other options and attributes describing my capabilities, as well as extend these attributes with personalized attributes that I find interesting or important for me to categorize the capabilities. So this already allows us to kind of like get going, right? To have a better understanding of where to maybe find ways of better alignment, right? So here it seems like this capability passenger processing in a way is maybe not functioning the way it should. So there's a couple of things I can do. I can obviously check this out in more detail, right? So there's insights dashboard, there's graphical charts that I can generate, or in this case here we have a little example here also where we can drill down. So if I press this little reference button, it will then take me to the capability in a bit more detail, describing also here what are the, first of all, people or the actors involved, what are the processes that are involved here. In this case that I'm having here, this model, I'm also seeing data that's being then accessed, the applications, right? And the technologies that here are associated and supporting the different applications, right? So from a perspective of modeling it or understanding here also the relationships, it would be a little bit like, you know, the technologies realizing and supporting the applications, which in turn then provide services or provide then support to the processes. So long story short, if I'm in check-in, I will very likely use the application, check-in application by the check-in staff. And while using this application, I am very likely going to alter data here in passenger data and seat map. And as it continues, then we can have a better understanding of how this capability of passenger processing is built up, right? Now here I already have also activated the heat mapping. So let me go here to the color. So normally it would look like this, obviously in blue, the applications here. But then enabling the heat mapping, I can then start also then diving a bit more into, now I figured out which capability I kind of like need to focus on a bit more, because we have, and we'll get also maybe to some extent into how you evaluate or how you set those fitnesses, right? Like in, for instance, here there's a business fitness for my application. How is this derived, right? So we'll get into this in just a little bit. But here again, I can see maybe I want to focus on certain applications. There might be this one here, security screening application, or this one that looks like it's also maybe not the best business fitness, while maybe others are actually quite good. And I can obviously also here continue my approach of understanding a bit more about the application. If I go into cost fitness, then for instance, I see that again, security screening application seems to be one that I might want to have a better look at, right? Because I'm seeing in a graphical and color state here how it is. You can obviously alter these colors. So, you know, it's just a preset configuration, and also obviously reverse the columns and so forth. But whatever you decide to do, it's about the tool kind of like guiding you in seeing where potential improvements might lie in, right? So there's, again, a couple of things that can be done so I can have a better understanding about this application, right? And for that, obviously, one approach would be maybe to go into the insights of this application. So just selecting the object here, the application. On the left side, I have my little board with the laser pointer. I always assume that was here. And then we jump into the insights, where we again have a dashboard that allows us then to drill down even more and get a better understanding of this particular application, right? So I see also who's then responsible for it. So in my example here, it's just one person, but there could be also more people involved. There could be more people involved, more in this case it's a user, but it could be also roles that are involved here in a RACI context, right? So maybe somebody needs to be consulted here. The overall surrounding network, which we did not see in the model just a moment ago, we just saw, or not we just saw, but we saw it in the context of the passenger processing capability. So here it's a more like deeper dive into the application itself, right? Away from the context in itself. Obviously here within the business processes, I see the one here that it is also then supporting, right? So there's also others that might be involved with this application is being used in other processes. And obviously here the capabilities, there's just one, so it's my passenger processing, but there could be also other capabilities where I'm utilizing the particular application, right? So I can then drill down and I can then jump into the corresponding business artifacts here, the processes, or also more maybe on the technical side, like the system software technologies and so forth, right? Not going too much into the insights here, but it gives you context, right? So you see also the surrounding components, what interfaces it might be providing, right? And what interfaces it might be using to communicate and elaborate then with other applications here. Right, so there again, the business fitness or the cost fitness, as we said, we'll have a look in this into a little bit. Potential redundancies the application has, and maybe here also quite important that we're actually in this example here, and this will also fall into place a little bit later, see that it's going to be eliminated. So it's from an investment strategy standpoint for our application, supporting that capability. We have here essentially an elimination set, right? Currently it's in production, and we see that there's going to be a different application that's going to replace it from a certain point of time, right? So here we see when it's starting. And then obviously we can continue getting information about the data that's being transferred, about the technologies that are being used, what models it might be referenced in, and so forth, and create further different types of analysis from PDF and Word file report types of evaluations or reports to interface reports, and obviously also the dependency analyzer. That is a little bit like up here when we have this network, just that I'm able to then define what path I want to actually go to, and also allow me to see further connections, right? So if I'm here and I see here that there's a business process and this widget here, I can click it, but I cannot see how maybe immigration and customs is then referenced in other capabilities, for instance, right? So this would be something that we can definitely, if I scroll down here, do in my dependency analyzer. So there's templates, but I'm going to start here from scratch. Templates you can obviously generate for particular purposes. So if I'm looking at, for instance, this immigration and customs, I'm going to put it below here, a process, right? I can select it, and then what I can do here is I can see, aha, this is the data that it's also then connected to this particular process. So I see, for instance, in this case, it's still just one capability, but it could have been a second capability, for instance, right? So I'm able to then also define indirect paths that exist. So if I'm here, for instance, and I, let's say, select here system software like this one and this one, which I can put maybe above to have an understanding of what system software generally supports this application. Then, for instance, clicking at the system software here, I see that there's actually many more that also are supported. So this indirect path impacting is then quite straightforward and understandable here, which then allows me to then also involve potentially people, right, to to talk about this application here, which I'm currently looking at because of my original heat mapping and it being maybe one that I want to focus on a bit more, right? So here I can then select comments, allow people to then collaborate, export this content, and so forth. Coming back here actually to my passenger processing view, there is a couple of further connections that we've built up here to kind of like highlight also possibilities to represent structures. For instance, here also based in a time perspective. So I'm looking now at an interface report in a way. So it's going to be an application landscape where my applications are then structured. And I can also see then my application in question here, the one that we are targeting here to look at in a bit more detail, that it is actually here providing this interface to immigration and custom application while it's using here the other one from up here, right? And there's further other applications and interfaces that have been then created in this landscape. So from here already, I'm able to get a better understanding of the holistic landscape here from the application standpoint. But what I wanted to actually show here is also the model time filter that you can activate in any model essentially. Here it's the application landscape, and so our models have a life cycle, so not the models, but the assets essentially have a life cycle behind them. So they're valid from a particular point of time until a particular point of time, gonna be introduced, and so forth. There's attributes that allow to have this data set. And the model time filter uses this data to go back in time or maybe also jump into the future, right? So here I'm able to also, if I'm very likely my example is a little bit older from a couple of months ago, where we were still having the application providing the interface, right? Also here I can set up certain time values, lifecycle values. And ideally, with the time filter, we can understand more about how not only the landscape built up, but also if there's potential issues. Like for instance, this application here is going to use this interface. I can obviously check the application in a bit more detail to see if there's other interfaces provided to it, but this seems to be a very common path here also from our value stream we had before, right? We had check-in application, we had the security screening, and we had immigrations and custom. They were basically in a sequential format, right? And so if I going in time a little bit to the future. And then I realized that a certain, for instance, interface is not being provided anymore, or maybe the application is set to be decommissioned. Then this one also has an issue, or in the process of doing the passenger onboarding or the passenger processing, whatever process was there used, I forgot already which one, and whatever actors were involved, they might run into issues because they're not able to utilize the corresponding application. Sounds a little bit like my internet connection, running and not functioning at some point of time. But here we have a good understanding how time shapes this, well, essentially, in the end of the day, the processing of passengers, right? Because this is the overall underlying story. We're creating a model, we're creating digital twins here of what's happening in real life, right? Going back here, there's another nice little view that we have included here. A while back, everybody was also talking about customer journeys. Now it's not become, it was a buzzword, then it went away a bit. But yeah, so here you can also, for instance, from a perspective of the person that's going to maybe check in and do all these steps, right? So there's this guy, looks happy, so probably going on vacation here. Oh, it says business traveler, so it must be a nice business trip there, and he's booking the flight, right? He's doing the customer journey steps, the touch points, and we can also model and create an overview that allows us to understand more about how this particular person is then, at the end of the day, boarding the airplane, right? So views such as this with the emotions here, we can also then set up in ADOIT. If I'm going back here, let me just see, I also have your requirement, forgot to mention this. So there seems to be a requirement set up on a particular application here, right? So we can obviously alter also our views and extend it with more information. It's not set to just what you see here in the swim lanes. So that's definitely not the case. And going into this view now, also from a different kind of like drill down perspective, we have here a little portfolio setup, which you can always trigger. Like if I, for instance, from here go up and trigger certain charts, I can then start creating them in whatever function or kind of like goal I want to set. There are certain charts that are more relevant for instance, time. There's certain charts more relevant for costs. So here in this sample, let me just click it. We have a couple of views or analysis, whatever you want to call them, that are pre-made here, or not pre-made, but created by the tool, because it basically uses the data set here, the capability map. And obviously in the capability map, we got a bunch of capabilities and applications and actors, because there's a connection, right? So assets in there are connected to other assets. So I don't have to see everything here. I could potentially also have that as a data set. But what do we have here? So we have here capability realization template that basically shows me the different value streams. So if I zoom in a little bit here, go up, you see here there's the arrival and ground handling, passenger handling, and so forth. So I see my different value streams. Then there's the capability that's in it. We saw this also in the model just a moment ago. What we did not see in the model was necessarily the applications that realize the capability and the system software. We saw this part a little bit more in the like drill down, but just for passenger handling, just for that capability, right? And also not necessarily the system software. There were not necessarily all of them there, or maybe I forgot to view it correctly, but there should have been actually, because the applications are related to the capabilities there. So here I can basically select them, these viewpoints. The color overlay is already there, right? So I'm seeing currently here that I'm focusing a bit on the business fitness of the capabilities. And maybe this should be the other way around. The bat should be more in red, obviously. And, oops, sorry. And then I see, for instance, as we saw before, also that passenger processing was a kind of like the bad guy that we want to have a bit more of a look in, right? So this is already a little bit what we had in the other, but here obviously in a box-in-box structure, where I can then also, for instance, say, well, let's focus a bit on the application, right? So I'm focusing here on applications, and I'm able to see here the business fitness of applications, or select other available options like cost fitness. Now you notice that here, when I clicked on the cost fitness, I had suddenly color here. While I was in the business fitness, I did not have color. The reason for that is simply that there is no documentation done on this yet. So this, it looks like it's not running how it should, because it should show me the color, right? But this also shows me that the work has not been done to, for these applications here, essentially define the business fitness. So this is a to-do yet that's open, right? So this is something that I can use as a to-do for the corresponding owners of these assets, or the people the most likely to give me feedback. They will go into the workspaces in a moment to give me that business fitness, for instance. So that it's an important attribute for like us in ADOIT. We've used it here and to describe it, how it fits to business, right? The application. If I go into the next one, there's another box-in-box here. Let's zoom in a little bit. And what do we have here? Do we have the, let me just check. We have the validity of the applications. Now here you see, again, depending on the attribute, the way that you structure colors and you define the colors. Here I have a time-based approach, so I can set up times from when to when is my my validity here. And normally it should color it in because of the lifecycle data that this application has, but I'm setting up color schemes, so when it falls into a particular one, it becomes, for instance, red or orange. So here again, I see which ones currently are also close to run out or to be decommissioned based on our current documentation. So again, we get the security screening application, the one that we've been looking at before. The others in green, I maybe in this current analysis will not really focus on, maybe at a later point, maybe on a different approach, but for now it's this one, right? If we continue, let me just check what we have here, the requirement. Okay, so here I have also the status of the requirements. So the requirements become important in the concept of doing changes for our application. Like if I scroll in, you can see it says migrate to a more secure authentication method, right? So these are requirements that we have derived from workspaces that we're going to see. Obviously, you can also create them as if you're the owner of this, you can also straight away create it, but there's areas that allow for collaboration. And here we see also if they've been started or not started, if they're on track or not, or if there's no entry at all on certain requirements here. So it's kind of like an action that I want to do to have an improvement on the applications. This is what this view basically shows me. Then 2 more, and then we'll jump into the workspaces, just to give you some ideas on how this can be detailed in ADOIT. And here again, we have some lifecycle information for the
Probably there's a question.
Oh, okay.
From Ari.
Good morning, Pablo and colleagues. Yes, just more or less actually on the question, not directly into the content, but more setting up the content. These views that you have showed us, ADOIT can generate them for us out of the data that we have, or are these views created and maintained by a human interface?
Okay, so basically the data set needs to be selected. To give you an example here, like let's go into a search query. Let's go into the objects and let's select, for instance, applications. And now I'm kind of like selecting my applications, and there's a bunch of like fake, not really existing applications because I've been creating them, but there's a couple that are really available here, right? So you see here, there's a bunch of applications. And from there, this is my data set currently. I can filter it, right? I can maybe say that I want to filter based on certain fitness or certain costs. So if I say I want to have a certain business fitness, I can say, please show me all the ones that are bad, medium, and good, not the excellent ones. Or let's just say everything that has something included here, but no entry, not applicable is not there. So now I got only 6, right? So all of these fake ones are gone essentially. And this is now my data set. So I can set up filters, or alter this. And then when creating on the bubble here, or not the bubble, but creating the chart, I can select the views. And then based on the information that is in, let's go with a bubble here, in the system, I'm then able to select a template. Okay, so there's a few, in this case, 3 templates available for applications, but you can obviously also create your own templates. And if I take, for instance, the application assessment, it will now create the graph for me based on data that's been documented in the asset by the owners. And you see here, there's the axis, bubble size, and so forth.
Comfortable with this part of it is creating those views, the box-in-box views. Those views, are they generated, or is it human interface that have to create those capability views that you have shown us, Pablo?
It's the same approach. So if I go to the data set and I select now here a box-in-box, I select, I don't know, a template, and it will then generate a box-in-box, depending on the documentation that it has, right? So here maybe it doesn't have too much. Let me see what comes here. There it provides an interface. So you see that it provides, or it creates the data based on the information that's been documented already in the assets.
So if the data is there, you can create the view.
Yes. The more data you have,
yes,
the better the views, the better the analysis, the heat mapping, the colors. Like recall I had the color one, I forget which one. I put a color and it was gray, and I said, well, it's gray because we have not yet documented the business.
We do not have much time, so I would want not, it comes back to the quality of the data that we have, but let's not continue down this road. Let's continue with your presentation, but I just wanted to make sure that it is not a hard interface engagement.
No, it's also live. So if there's changes, like for instance, if I save this in my favorites, this here, and now this application will have a third interface. The next time I open this view, it will have the third interface here. So it's a live view essentially of the state that our data is in. Okay.
Yeah, so the data structure is important, but let's again not to continue down this road now. Rather spend time per your presentation, and then I'll put some questions in the chat if need be.
There's many ways to also get the data into the tool, but this will be like another diversion into various different things. So let me check where I was now. I think here. I wanted to briefly finish these 2 and then go into the workspaces. So again, we have the data already set, but this is a nice Gantt chart in this case, okay, where I see my timeline, and I see also when, for instance, the implementation was started for certain applications, right? And if I go here, this is a good example. If I go to the red line, that's today, right? And this obviously moves over time. If I open it up at the beginning of 2026, the same view, this bar is going to be here. I see with the red cross here, when an application is set to run out, like this one here, security screening. So it's the same one we've been looking at a little bit over time here. But then we see that there's going to be another one that's going to be implemented, which is my biometric security screening, right? And the replacing of this application is also documented here in a graphical yellow dotted line, right? So these are ways for me to also understand if I select my data set, and I'm just taking here my capabilities from the airport example. It could be any type of analysis. I could take all my applications belonging to a certain department and create such views, right? And then I see when to move, right? So here I need to move because this one here, actually immigrations and customs, is also set to run out, and I don't look like I have a replacement set. So what do we do? Let's talk, guys, about this, right? And the last one here, the cost, obviously also another attribute that can be documented in the application. And an example, for instance, let's go into boarding process management. I see here that it has 35,000 and that is currently set up as the average, right? Because here I got 20,000, there I got whatever, I got 50,000. So here also I'm able to have an overview of costs, and there I can set up color overlays if I wish to highlight certain thresholds and so forth. But let's go now into the workspaces, because in some cases, or in many cases, the way to get the data or to retrieve the data should be simple, right? So it should be not something that we go into complex drop downs and so forth. So we get the workspaces here. The workspaces are scenarios, workshop environments, essentially, where we can jump into a room, or let's call it, and involve people that collaborate in a user interface that's way more, I would call it, let's put it this way, less technical. You just answer questions. So you would go in, let's go into the application investment planning. You could create it. Obviously, that's me. I can add users. I'm the admin and this and that. And when I create one, I'm going to go into one that's already done here. I have an option to select my applications. Okay. I can obviously add applications to it. So it makes sense maybe to focus on a capability, for instance, like the passenger processing maybe, and add the applications that are in there. And then we have this so-called business fitness and IT fitness, and there's nice colors here. So we see in blue that this has not been yet done, so I can assess it, or I can delegate it to other users that are maybe also in my workspace and are maybe knowledgeable about this particular application, right? Here I already have started. You see that somebody has already done something, so they can be sent a reminder to continue. I can delegate it, and the ones here in green have already been done by somebody. So let's go into one here that's currently pending. This one here maybe. Actually, I started this one, so I can assess it. And you can see that there's questions, right? Questions relevant for our business fitness of this application, like how serious would a major incident or total failure be for your company? And there's a couple of options with an information button here. Now, everybody has a different approach on what business fitness means for them. So you can, in the toolkit, alter these questions, obviously, and alter also the answer schemes so that the answer schemes have a resulting logic for the numbers you receive, and when it's green, when it's orange, or whatever. Actually, you'll see later it's not green or orange, it falls into a certain field, right? So you just choose you answer your questions essentially. You don't have to do any, modeling or anything in that sense. You just answer questions. When you're done with that, they will then jump or fall here into the time graph here, into this migration, investing, tolerating, and eliminating space. I have here the different applications that have landed, right? And I'm then able to also, from here, get an understanding of, from the answering of the questions on the IT and business fitness, if, for instance, in a certain application is maybe in a migration state or maybe in an elimination state. The overview here, I can then, as an admin of this workspace, also go in and then, for instance, say, well, you know what, my security screening application, we want to eliminate this. This one here, we want to actually invest in, right? Because this is going to be the one that's going to replace it. So I can alter it if I feel like our results are not correct because the questions maybe not corresponding. As an admin, you can still kind of like override it in a way. It's going to track who did that, right? So it was confirmed by me. So it was originally an elimination, but I put it in investment state, right? And obviously from here, getting an understanding of where they land. By the way, this data is also then set into the object itself, into the asset, into the application. So it will populate that or document the application. So the investment status and also the business fitness and IT fitness statuses will be then overwritten via the workspace, right? Typically from there, when you've done an assessment of your, if you want to invest in them or not, in your applications, you could go into a road mapping exercise. So here it's a similar approach. You can select your applications that you want to focus on. I have those 6 applications, but obviously you would then maybe go in and see, oh, I got one here that's going to be in migration or something. It looks like everything that's in tolerate or migrate is already over there. Everything else has no entry, so it's all good. But if something's missing, you feel like, okay, let's do a roadmap exercise here. So you can click on next or here under requirements. And this is where we create requirements or add requirements to the corresponding application. Like for instance, I see we want to migrate this one here, right? So we want to migrate this one here, for instance, right?
Thank you.
So we can add a requirement, right, from our existing repository in that sense, but we can also use AI. Bye-bye. We can also use AI here. And there's a couple of places where AI can be used, and it's again a buzzword, right? But at the end of the day, there's a connector. The connector uses currently the OpenAI LLM and the Azure LLM currently, some of the Microsoft and the OpenAI. But I think, I don't know, the roadmap now they're extending to also have further LLMs being connected. You would need, so the client would need to have a license of OpenAI. So the connector and everything's there. It's going to do that work, and it's going to then propose, as you can see here, certain requirements based on what we had here in this application, that it's to be migrated and so forth. So I can do these, for instance, adapt data access policies to enforce least privilege, right? So this could be something that we do, but it always is going to tell me that it's AI generated, right? So I can choose to also not do that, but for now, let's just add it, and it's going to be added here to my system. In the description of it, it's going to also say it's AI generated, so it's always going to tell that, right? And then from here, we can then jump into our prioritization of this requirement. So it's a little bit different because here we're thinking about, is this a time waster, or is it a fill-in, a quick win, a big project? So I might say that, I don't know, strengthen access control and data is not a time waster, but it's maybe a quick win, even though it doesn't sound like a quick win. A quick win would be something that is maybe a little bit less technical, right? But there you go. You can then define if something would be a fill-in or if it's a quick win. So that, again, in a collaborational kind of like structure, talking with people, dragging them into places. And then also here you're able to then define when to plan to implement them. So you can drag and drop the different requirements into the corresponding quarter, or change them as you go along, as you plan to do them. And then there's the track requirements place as well to see, have you started them? Hopefully not everything is on unstarted. It should be on track, or it should be completed, or whatever. So here you're also able to, in a workshop type environment, discuss with people the plan and how you're going to continue with this, right? And obviously here there's a summary of where the different requirements have landed and how you're then tracking them, and everything, is it up to speed or not, right? So these are typical workspaces that we have that allow us to essentially go into these types of road mapping exercises. There's also for capabilities, so it's a very similar approach. Here I got my capabilities. In this case, also can select here which ones I want to also focus on, and then we define requirements for them, plan the requirements. So a very similar structure, right? And as I said here, we're also going to continue extending here workspaces to allow this collaboration to happen. And the creation of the data, like the requirements, can happen here. Also some type of assessment can happen that then triggers back into the tool, like we saw before in the very beginning. I can use it then for heat mapping. I can then, from my capability map, go and say, well, show me the business fitness of my capabilities of my applications. And then I'm able to understand more about it. That would be the workspaces, right? Any questions, anything which you feel like you have from what I wanted to show today on the capability alignment with IT without stretching it too much?
Question. Ari's got a question.
Yes, thanks. Just a statement. I think in many fraternities, and I want to put it on a country level, but in fraternities using ADOIT and working in the space of modeling, there's a dynamic way of using the tool, and then there's a static way of using it. That's my question was, how do you produce the content to generate the views?
Yeah.
And many of us still stuck in static modeling where you create the view and then we have a myriad.
Yeah. You do it this way. You have a model and you start, creating it, and connecting it, which is also you're building the boxes, or you're drilling, taking data in. Yeah.
Yes, versus using the data and making sure that the data is quality data so that you can generate the views out of the data rather than creating the views in a static way. So this is a statement. I'm interested in, you mentioned the use of AI, so also how AIs will be used in ADOIT more generally.
Yeah.
For us to spend less time generating views and more time using the views, as you've indicated, because many of us capture content and that goes to covered-ware instead of being dynamically used. Just a statement. Thanks, Pablo. Thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome. Yeah, so maybe quickly on features that are AI relevant. So we kind of like pinpoint them into certain areas, like in the workspace, as you saw a moment ago, we have it. There's also something that we, one second, that we do, which is the, let me open up here at technology. There you go. So let's open up here an asset, right? And there's, for instance, my life cycle data, or in this case, the life cycle data. So you see these are the fields, right, where you could potentially alter. And very often we've had in the past also then people asking about, integrations to systems that tell them when certain technologies are going to run out. And there were complex integration, or complex I wouldn't call them, but like more effort integrations. But now with AI, you just go and it checks that up. Obviously, it's somewhere stored. Obviously, it should go into the official channels here, which, depending on the LLMs, it does. And then it goes and tells me, well, the vendor support will be at this point of time. Will you apply it or not? And I can say yes. It always will tell me, watch out. It's AI generated, right? So I can apply it. So this is a place where we also use it.
Yeah. Just
so
mindful of another question that is rising, but it also shows you this is a multi-party involvement. It's not just the business architect or your enterprise architect. Your application managers and portfolio managers can also feed from and input into, and some data is actually depending on your application lifecycle management from other parts of the business. But there's another question.
I think you're muted, Denzel, if you're saying something.
No, yeah, it's Denzel's question, yeah.
Hi, good morning, Pablo. Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick one, man. I think with previous releases, so when you go into your workspace templates, it's just something I'm picking up that previously we did not have the application-based roadmap. So what I see now, you've got the capability planning. But I think in the current version, I can only see the application investment, the application roadmap, and the goal-based roadmap.
It depends on what version you're on, because it works like everything in with IT. So there's like this major version, we call it 16, 17, and it's a big news, and it might have a totally new feature. But then there's in between minor versions that also then appear depending on how development goes and how swift a change needs to be because of a patch or because of a system security thing, or maybe a functionality that has been in the works but not ready when the major version was released. So then we have minor versions, and then sometimes in the minor versions there's an extension of, for instance, a workspace or some functionality that before was not there. I have the same problem sometimes. Like I maybe, like, this is a cloud version one here, like the most updated one, and I might have a local installed, like this one here, and I'm using 17.4 here, and I'm pretty sure it's already 17.4.5 or something, and it has something that this one, has and I don't have. So it depends on the version you have. So we can obviously check that and see if there can be an update to a new version on there. I think also, if I'm not mistaken, like you've been in contact there with Tony on that regard, or Anthony, I call him Tony. So maybe we can find out what version you're on and then check if we can upgrade it.
Okay. No, just a quick one. It's 17.3.1. So it could be that we need to bump up.
Like we need to check. I don't have the overview. Like we have conference pages with what each minor version has as a new thing, but I don't remember. I just, if I need to, I go in there and check it out. But we can check it out, obviously. Yes.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Yeah. Also, like very quickly, I don't know if time allows, and we have 2-3 minutes, but getting data in the tool, right? There we have something called the forms. the forms allow you to, like you said, there's a static approach, and then you have more this fluid approach of getting data in the tool. And very often, obviously, to model and so forth, you have the Archimate modeling data or possibilities, but you need to get the data in the tool. And there's obviously the Excel import templates. There's things that are a bit more technical. You got to go into the repository, but very often we've been now since a good year or so pushing for the forms, which allows you to create templates. So you can, for instance, let's go into maybe this one here. You can edit your templates or your questionnaires, and people then receive emails. They're triggered either manually, or you can trigger them setting a time. And normally the owner of the corresponding asset. So if this PAX application, I put myself as the owner, so I get notifications, and I also can go into my forms and click on this, for instance, for the data update, and it opens up the questionnaire. The questionnaire you can create like this. You can create questions. You can add questions, and if I, for instance, go into the first one, it's going to open up on the right side. What are the properties that it's going to change? What are the targets that it's going to change, and so forth, right? So I can essentially create my questionnaire, also defining what results will have an effect on the asset, the relations, the attributes, the business fit, whatever it is, and then the person responsible will receive the questionnaire. They just this is the demo. They will change the description. They might change also, for instance, if there is capabilities that are supporting, maybe there is a couple that we want to delete. Maybe it's not this one. Maybe there's another one that it is supporting, which is baggage management, let's put it. I don't know if I deleted this one a moment ago, but I can obviously, as an owner of this application, add information, but just the ones that are in the questionnaire. And it can be as complex as wished, or it can be just a simple, please update your, your life cycle data, or please update your cost fitness, or please give me feedback about where you're using this application. Whatever it is, people then just answer the questions, click on submit, and they're done. So it's a way to get people involved in different places without them actually needing to go all the way into this more, a bit more technical with drop downs and with attributes, and then what is this? What is aggregate? What is it? Realize? So it gives you all the options essentially, right? So this is definitely also a good way to get data in the tool that then again you can use to create the viewpoints or the analysis that we had somewhere in the beginning there with the Gantt charts and matrices and so forth. Yeah. Any last questions before I take the coffee on coffee day?
I think